Let's open in prayer. Loving, holy God, our teacher, send your Holy Spirit on us. Like a deer longs for the flowing streams of water, our souls long for you as you guide us to open the hearts, the minds, the eyes, the ears, the souls of your people. Bless those who come seeking you and let us find you on our journeys. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, reconciliation doesn't always seem like it's an easy thing to do, does it? The author talks a lot this week about the examples she gave about when her parents came and totally surprised her. But she learned a lesson from that. And that lesson was the love that's involved. And it takes love to be able to go through reconciliation and restoration. So she gave us that cute example, but then she got into how Jesus sought out Peter after the resurrection and how he sought out Thomas. And she brought in a lot of examples of how we also are doubters like Thomas. And I think probably if we're honest with each other, we probably have doubting issues throughout all of our learning. And I think that is what instills us to learn more. She talks about a lot of other things, but then she's leading to things. What do we do from here? And how do we proceed? And what can we do other than read a book? And she says in that there are a lot of things we can do. And I'm going to play the video first today. Judy's going to have to leave, and she's my audio-visual technician. So if Judy would play this video, this is just one video, and it's a fun video. This is by Emmanuel Acho. Emmanuel Acho used to play for the Philadelphia Eagles as a linebacker. And he has a series, and that's what we're going to watch one of the sessions today.
Even more importantly, he's a UT grad.
Yes, he is.
Episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man. Now, the goal of this was never to be a monologue, but rather a dialogue, and encourage you to have dialogues of your own. So I'm privileged to be joined by Academy Award winner, but more importantly, father of three, Matthew McConaughey. But Matthew, why are you?
Tell you why I'm here, Emmanuel. I'm here to learn, share, listen, understand, here to discuss some common grounds between us, but also expose differences between us. Here to have conversation, hopefully promote more conversations, and with the end goal being that we take the time we're in now and constructively turn a page in history through some righteous and justifiable change.
That is always my goal. Before we get to our own dialogue, I have to address something for y'all, because so many have asked, do I say Black people or African American? And the simple and shortest answer is Black, because it's not only most accurate, it's also least offensive. Keep in mind, not all Black people in America are African. There are Jamaicans, there are Cubans, but also there's some Black people that don't identify as African because that heritage got stripped from them during slavery. So just a quick short answer. I know so many of y'all asked that question, but Matthew, let's talk.
Well, this is another reason why I'm here. Like your last episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with Black Man, I watched that, and it gave me new context. It gave me some new insight. It made me think of the why, not the how, which I think is a lot of what you're unpacking, and hopefully we can unpack today with the why, individually. And I was telling you, I'm big on values. I feel them deteriorating across the board. How someone like me, how can I do better as a human? How can I do better as a man? How can I do better as a white man?
That's powerful. That's how you put me on the spot. I'm gonna be honest with you, because that's what we're here for, to have uncomfortable conversations. You have to acknowledge that there's a problem.
Yes.
So that you can take more ownership for the problem. The first step to acknowledging it is sitting in this chair right here across from a black man and being like, okay, I may not be talking about you, Emmanuel Acho, but I may be talking about people who look like you. Individually, you have to acknowledge implicit bias. You have to acknowledge that you'll see a black man and for whatever reason, you will view them more of a threat than you will a white man. Probably because society told you to. You have to acknowledge that if there are two people with equal resumes, studies show that the person with the white sounding name is twice as likely to get a call back as a person with a black sounding name. You're a very successful man who probably has several people under you. Are you a part of that statistical problem? Are you looking at a resume saying, they sound a little too hood for me? You know, so I think individually, we must each fix the problem because I believe that individuals, they affect the houses, and the houses, they affect the cities, and the cities affect the states, and the states affect the nation, and the nation affects the continents. Yes, exactly. So individually, you have to acknowledge, maybe I do have a bias and fix it.
Yep. Is Black Lives Matter a banner for now? Yes. But is it a banner that is a bridge? Do you think to take us to, when we see Black Lives Matter and we understand that and it's all agreed on, then we can wave the flag of all lives matter, but not until.
I think it's not until. For example, right now we're facing the world's greatest pandemic since the Spanish flu. We all know that. Coronavirus, COVID-19. Right now we're focused on finding a remedy for that illness. We're focused on finding a remedy for that strain of the flu. That's not to say that cancer doesn't matter. It's not to say that HIV doesn't matter. It's not to say that ALS doesn't matter. All those things still matter. But right now, the coronavirus is killing people. And so in the same token, Matthew, that's what I propose is that once we get these Black lives that are being ended unjustly, handled by the grace of God, if we can get those handled through conversations like these, and I hope that y'all at home are having, then we can be at a point to focus on everything else. But remember, you walked in here with the mask. You walked in here with Clorox. Why? Because there's a virus going on.
A specific
virus that is eminently ending lives. And that's the same thing going on in the world. There's a virus. It's just of the mind. It's not of the body.
Heard. Equality. The definition of equality. What equality is and what is equality not. It's been an American issue forever, and we continue to work and grow and evolve and debate what the definition of equality should be. Is there unilateral equality? There's diverse equality. It's a topic that I don't know that we can answer right now, but I'd love to hear your opinion on it.
I do not think that there is such a thing as equality in America. The wake of slavery is still hitting African Americans. When you get on a boat, whether you're in Lake Austin here, 10 minutes from here, or anywhere in the ocean, if you get on a boat, there is a wake that follows the boat. And although you might not still be driving the boat, there are African Americans getting smacked by the wake left of slavery. Well, Acho, what is that wake? And that's what we talked about. Systemic injustice, poor school systems, voter suppression. There's a wake. And so that's why things aren't equal. Only because there's still a wake from slavery. Don't feel guilty. Just acknowledge.
Heard. I heard this term the other day, and I'd never heard it before. And I went, what? Talked to this person, he explained it to me. White allergies. White allergies that by where we were raised and how we were raised in our history growing up, there's certain just imported obvious ways that we're prejudiced in ways that we don't even understand. We got white allergies and may not even know it. And so I was sitting there, looking at my own life, and I sit there and I go, all right, I'm me. Longview High School was over 50% Black. I applied to Grambling. I was the first white to ever work at Catfish Station in all blues, Black Blues Bar on 6th Street. I am married to a non-white immigrant. I have Black friends all through my life and still do. But what prejudices may I have via white allergies that I may not even be aware of?
Let me ask you this, actually, since you brought it up before I respond. Has this situation in our world or my video brought out any white allergies that you never saw? Did you have any white allergies that were in your blind spots?
It exposed ways of looking at things in a way that, maybe I didn't see the other side of the coin. As I started off with some of the context you put things in, even very simple things that are like obvious math of, yes, whites and blacks can all have it hard, but whites have never had it harder because of the color of their skin.
Yeah.
That's an obvious thing.
Yeah.
Now, I maybe realized that, but never looked at that side of the coin until you brought it up. And I'm like, aha. And so it's a very simple thing. So maybe there's just more that I would say for me, more that I'm diving deeper into how I'm looking at things, how I'm looking at myself, how I can learn more, see things from your side more, see things from the black side more. So I can get a 4-dimensional view here, because inherently, maybe I had to some extent, I've been living in a way where I didn't quite see all sides as clear as I could have.
The greatest white allergy that we see played out as black people practically, one of the greatest, backhanded compliments. Let me tell you what I mean. I went to an affluent high school in Dallas, Texas, St. Mark's. And when I was a kid, they would all say, Acho, you don't even talk like you're black. Or, Acho, you're like an Oreo, black on the outside, white on the inside. Or, you don't even dress like you're black. I didn't realize how offensive that was at the time. It wasn't until I realized, wait a second, you were assuming that black people don't sound educated. You were assuming that to be black, I have to wear a do-rag or a wave cap and be sagging my pants. You are assuming something about black people, and I contradict that assumption. And as a result, I am not black. And so I think white allergies play themselves out practically in backhanded compliments. Get this one. You're so pretty for a black girl. So that's to imply that being black, I shouldn't be pretty.
It's for the black girl.
Yes.
For a black man part that becomes the allergy you don't see. When he just gave me the backhanded indirect compliment, it was good with you're so pretty or you sound so smart.
But then you say for this. I mean, and I think that the reason, McConaughey, that it's a white allergy is because white people don't recognize it.
Right.
My high school kids, they meant nothing by it. But now all of a sudden it's like, no, that's not a compliment at all.
Heard. Some people have white flu. All right. Like, listen to this quote. A quote came out the other day from the white woman that said none of this stuff would have happened with George Floyd if we just wouldn't abolish slavery. What? Yeah. What? So you hear that and you go, how asinine. What decade, a century, who are you living? Where did that come from?
We're not that far removed from slavery, from Jim Crow laws. Mm-hmm. We're not. So many people are like, it's 2020. Slavery was such a long time ago. The University of Texas athletic football program wasn't integrated until the late 60s. I played at Texas. You're one of the most notable, biggest, most passionate Texas fans. We are not that far removed. It's not as if so many people have emailed me this week, following last week, and said, well, maybe this will die off with our ancestors. Maybe this will. It won't. Because where do you think you acquire information? More is caught than is taught. More is caught than is taught. But there's hope, because all it takes is a conversation.
Heard. Look, finally, I want to ask you, what can I do? What's my responsibility? What's your responsibility? Today, tomorrow.
People should take the responsibility proactively to say, you know what? Maybe I'm a part of the problem. Maybe I can fix this issue, not just by being not racist, but by being anti-racist. Right. Maybe I can level the playing field and make it a fair fight.
Heard. I came across this Langston Hughes poem, Let America Be America Again. I just wanted to read this one piece that stuck out to me that seems to halo a lot of what we're talking about. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free.
It's powerful.
The land that never has been yet. That's the dream of America.
That's the realest thing that I've truly heard, because it's acknowledging America, we've never been what we've aspired to be. We can be, but it's going to take this, and it's going to take those watching this to imitate this with open hearts, ready to listen, ready to learn, and ready to do.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, man. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Uncomfortable Conversations with the Black Man, Matthew McConaughey.
Manuel Acho.
We'll see y'all next time.
I'd never heard of white allergies either. So what we're doing is what we should be doing. We're talking, we're reading, we're learning, we're letting Latasha set our conversation schedule. And I find that exciting. As we're on our journey to restorative reconciliation, it's always possible to achieve. But it's going to take time, it's going to take a lot of understanding, and it's a very worthy cause. Bridge builders grow. They mature towards the aim of reconciliation, which is restoration of relationship. The ultimate goal of a bridge builder is full, complete, and total relational restoration. Frustration can become an obstacle, causing many to give up. Have you ever given up on something? Have you ever wanted to give up on something? Sometimes it's very hard to stay in the game, to stay in and work when you have the naysayers, when you have the people, as Emmanuel Acho talked about, well, Matthew McConaughey, that if it hadn't been for George Floyd, we wouldn't be doing any of this now. I've heard people tell me that from our church.
That's what I was thinking about this video. What a wonderful video to share with our church, because it's got celebrities. It's got a very calm, kind Black man who's also a football hero.
Which would attract people.
Perfect. I mean, there couldn't be anybody less threatening in this than in this video, the way he gently comes across. I think he's less challenging than Latasha.
Oh, yeah.
He's just, and that's what I think we're looking for, is entry points for people who are reluctant because they're scared they're going to get beat up and made to feel bad. And that's not even the purpose.
Well, the good news about that, Mary Ellen, is that this was session 2, and he's done either 7 or 8 of them now.
Oh, wow.
And you can find all of them on YouTube.
Yeah, we could get them. We could show them and talk about them.
The one he did last week, he did with Chelsea Handler on the Karens. Remember the Karens?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Does everybody understand what the Karens refers to? No. The woman who was in Central Park who called the police on the bird watching gentleman, her name was Karen. And she used those special words. An African-American man has threatened me. He's attacked me. He's going to attack me. And then we've seen people show up during the pandemic who won't wear masks and start throwing things off shelves. Well, that new quick term has become, well, she's a Karen. And I have good friends named Karen, and I'm sorry they got stuck with that. But that happened. That's how it is. But Emmanuel Acho has a lot of these conversations. And then Oprah Winfrey liked them so much, they're going to put them into a book. And so that will be available, and he continues to do it. And he started doing these shortly after the murder of George Floyd and shortly after the coronavirus started. So it's relevant today, just like it was when he did this one with Matthew McConaughey. And I love that he will throw in little gems like, well, people always ask me, what do you want to be called, African American or Black? Well, to make it simple, call us Black. They're people who are Black are very proud of their skin color. And we have adopted the term now, BIPOC. And that's a wonderful word to use because it's inclusive of all. Everybody, Black, Indigenous, people of color, whether you're Asian, whether you are an Indigenous person, whether you are Latina, wherever that BIPOC, she covers that. Now, somebody suggested that we needed another letter for the gay community. And I think we just stick people who are not inclusive under that BIPOC umbrella. And there's room for all of us under that umbrella. So anyway, yeah, Sue.
I can't understand the very last, it's by what?
POC, people
Okay.
of color,
Oh,
BIPOC.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And last question McConaughey asks is, what can I do? And what can we do? We're doing it. And what we're trying to do is, how do we get this information to the other people who are part of our church family? And yeah, Mary Ellen, maybe it's the Emmanuel Acho show. And maybe we try something like that. Maybe we go do something wild and different. It probably wouldn't be the first time we've done things like that. But having said that, what did you guys get from that and your reading this week? How does that lead to restoration? How does conversation lead to restoration?
Because it's all about the relationship. Life is
Yes.
about relationships, whether it's our relationships with each other or whether it's our relationship with God. Everything begins with the relationship.
Yes.
And when we reach out in relationship, we are saying, you are a person of dignity, and I want to get to know you better. Which is why it has to begin with individuals, because otherwise it won't last, will it?
No, it all goes back to relationship. And I was glad to hear Emmanuel Acho say, first you have to acknowledge and be aware.
Yeah.
And we took that step in this book chapters ago.
We
But
did,
it continued.
but I think that's the step that would
Yes.
be reassuring to hesitant members of our congregation to hear.
Yes.
Nothing is being asked of you today
Right.
No. Just
except to
listen
acknowledge the
Yeah.
fact.
and be aware.
Acknowledge the fact.
Right.
Quit denying, quit putting your head in the sand, quit making up alternate versions like all lives matter and blue lives matter. Acknowledge. That's all.
Yes.
And
That's
you
all.
don't have to worry that we're going to try to make you do something else, that this is the top of a slippery slope.
That's right.
We have to, I think people like us, well, I don't know if I'm speaking for the rest of you, but after reading many books in the last year, I've decided that my call is to other white people and to try to help the most hesitant at least take the first step. And there are some of them who like me and might listen to what I say. And so my job is to look for situations where I can witness and invite. And this just looks like, I love this video. This is the best thing I've seen for somebody that's scared. And that's what I hear when I talk to people or read their Facebook posts that upset me the most is a lot of fear that you're going to try to involve me in a revolution, and
It's
I'm not revolutionary.
a lot of it is the fear of the unknown, I think.
I think so.
What are you going to make me do? Because
I think this
John,
chapter was very reassuring. I mean, when you talk about it, the fact that the relationship between her parents was healed because they both loved her. how easy does that translate to? I'm going to try to heal my relationship, or at least take some first steps with
Yes.
somebody of the of another race or ethnic group, because we both love God.
Right.
That's what this is about.
That's what it's about. John.
I was just going to say that if we remember when we had our Muslim group in, and the first question was, well, how many of you know a Muslim, and or are close to a Muslim? And the answer was almost no one raised their hand.
Right.
I would suggest that that is similar to the group I'm looking at on the screen.
Sure.
How many of you are close friends with a Black person? And again, I'm assuming, but I just know, I know for myself, I hang with people who look like me, and that's the way it is. We've got to figure out a way to, as you said, Mary Ellen, gently move the church into a direction that is safe for them. We've already stepped out as a group, but we're only a small part of our congregation who we love. And so it's back to relationships. How do we develop a relationship with among ourselves as a church to move the needle a little bit? So.
Well, it won't be easy, but it's the work of the gospel. Jesus modeled the restorative reconciliation for us in coming back and talking to Peter, in talking to Thomas and letting doubting Thomas feel his wounds. So it's not going to be easy, but it's something that we can do. What about, how would you gather these people together?
Judy?
Well,
Judy.
I could say two things, but just to answer your question, we were talking with Natasha the other day. She is leading a Bible study over at the Doyle Center on, was it every other Thursday?
Every other Thursday.
At 4 o'clock. And we asked her if she would ask the group if they would be open to some of us joining them. And she said she would ask, but she said, I will say to you though, that's all you'll be doing. You're not going to come in and lead. You're not going to make, this is their Bible study. This is what they do, and the way they do it, they like the way they do it. And so it'll be interesting to see what kind of response we get. The other thing I wanted to say before I jump off is yesterday I watched a webinar from the Synod. Dr. Christina Cleveland, who has written the book Disunity in Christ, and also Jesus, God is a Black man, God is a Black woman. I can't remember what the title is, something like that.
Can't either.
Anyway, she said something in the middle of it that it felt to me like okay. She was talking about lament, and she was talking about the fact that as white people, and particularly as white Christian Protestants, our first inclination is, okay, there's a problem, now let's fix it. And you know, we keep coming back around to almost saying that, how can we fix it? What can I do? And she talked about, she's a lovely young woman, and she's, I guess her color is not very Black. So she talked about her own privilege. We talked about it in terms of colorism. She didn't use that word, but coming from a very well-educated family, she has a PhD, you know, all of that. But at one point she lived in a ghetto or a neighborhood. And she said, I was uncomfortable living in a world that treats them that way. So she, as a woman of color, even realized, you know, that she had more privilege in so many ways. But then she said, sitting there in the lament is the work right now.
Mhm.
It's not jumping into fixing. That individual work is necessary. And I thought to myself, that's where I am. I just am lamenting. I don't have any answers. I mean, yeah, maybe I can go over to the Doyle Center twice a month, but that's really a drop in the bucket. It's going to take lots and lots and lots and lots of drops for anything to change. And at my age, maybe that's all that I'll be able to do. It's going to take a lot of people, Emmanuel Acho, you know, McConaughey, and all those kinds of folks that are of that age and younger. Jen, just, you know, keep.
I hear your humility, Judy, in that, and I applaud it. But I want to just say, on the flip side of that coin, the mothers of the church have been its backbone since Mary and Martha. And people like us, old white women, have a lot more influence than we think, probably, even if it's just by example.
I agree. You guys are inspiring to me as a young person, but I also think you're less scary than young people saying the same things, because
yeah, we look like somebody's grandma.
I mean, you're not just some crazy young liberal who doesn't know enough about the world or any of those things. You really have the life experience to kind of back it up, and you're not nearly you're approachable in a way that a lot of younger people aren't, especially in communication with people who are older than us. And I'm older than I look, but often not taken seriously because they think I'm real young.
Done.
Yeah, just for your benefit, Jennifer, you missed last week my comment, which was, I'm looking at this screen of women, and you are the change, as just as you said, and as Mary Ellen said, the women are the backbone of the church in so many ways, and I'm heartened that even though we're all, or most of us are of an advanced age, we have a lot of opportunities still.
Judy, I'm thinking about, you know, our PW study, and this week we were looking at how do we pass on the ability to lament to children. And, you know, there is so much, as we've just all said, there is so much to be said for wisdom. It might not be appreciated in our society, but just being able to lament and acknowledge that there is a huge problem, and modeling that to our children and to our grandchildren is a huge role. I'm not saying it's the only role, but we live in a world where doing and, you know, this relentless path to success does not value just sitting in something and savoring it and taking it inward and wrestling with it. And it's such a huge thing that we can do for our children and our grandchildren, I think. How we live our lives is a constant message to them.
Well,
that
thank you.
Things can change.
A session meeting to take in new members, which is a happy thing to do in the midst of all this. So continue your good conversation. We'll be back with you again next week.
Okay, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Judy.
The other thing we need to think about is there are institutions doing something. We read about Georgetown and what Georgetown has been doing. Georgetown University now has something on their page. When you go to registration, the attention is given to applicants who are descendants of faculty, staff, or alumni. Admission to Georgetown, to any university, is a complex decision that takes many factors into account. Being a descendant of faculty, staff, or alumni, or being a descendant of the people enslaved by the Maryland province is one of these factors, but is not the determining factor. And so the students put forth a proposition, a reconciliation contribution fee of $27.20 to be added on to each tuition. 272, the number of slaves sold so that Georgetown can stay open as a university. So 2720. The undergraduate students passed the referendum with a 66% majority. That's 2/3. And then I looked and it says, well, this is non-binding because the university has to agree. This all happened last April. Everything I looked at, and I'm on their newsletter list now, everything I looked at for they called it the GU 272 plus referendum. It was passed in April, and people, all the information I get now comes from October 19. So the university has not agreed to that yet, from what I get. But I'm going to keep on it, and I'll let you know if they have any update.
And the money is to
If the
help
money
make it
goes
possible
toward
for these
reparations,
descendants. Okay,
yes, it goes for reparations.
which are expressed as tuition.
Tuition. Yes, yes. So with plans to pay slavery reparations, 2 seminaries prompt a broader debate. Those 2 seminaries, and this is from October 19, those 2 seminaries, the first one is Virginia Theological Seminary in Alexandria, Virginia, which is the flagship institution of the United States Episcopal Church. It announced in September 19 that it has set aside $1.7 million for a reparations fund. No, this is September this year, for a reparations fund, given that enslaved person once worked on its campus and that the school participated in racial segregation even after slavery ended. And then earlier this month, Princeton Theological Seminary in Princeton, New Jersey, followed suit with an announcement of a $27 million endowment fund for reparations, from which 1.1 million would be dispersed annually. So people are making a step. Institutions are starting to make more steps towards that, and we're getting information on it. And that is a very good thing. But there's still a lot to do. And as in Georgetown University, there's still things that need to happen before that happens. And as she said, this started from when a person on campus who was into history looked back and found all this information out. Georgetown was going down. It was at that time a Jesuit Catholic school. And when it was going down, the priest decided the only thing he had of value were people. And he sent 272 people to Louisiana. There were at least 3 people who received them and paid them the value of each slave. And
One of them was 2 months old.
One of them was 2 months old. It took everybody. So then Latasha talks about crossing the bridge to restoration. Be the Bridge Communities is to bring racial reconciliation, which requires us to move through the bridge building steps, acknowledging the past, lamenting it, as Mary Ellen said, confronting shame and guilt, confessing our collective sin, extending forgiveness, committing to repentance, making reparations, and ultimately moving into complete restoration. Well, that's a mouthful before you get to the restorations. So as we look at some of these questions, and as next week is our last meeting here, and I hate that we're ending now, but we're doing it for Advent, and then we'll be back doing something. And what I want to mention is that during the time that we are away, read other books that you've heard people talk about. Go online, go to YouTube and find some other videos. If you find something that you read, make a copy of it somewhere in your files, and maybe it's something we can discuss next semester, because we want to keep this smooth going. I've already done.
We
Pardon?
could share it on our email group too.
We could.
Keep on our email group.
If you go to the very back page of this book, it says find out more at Whiteness 101. And I went there, and it tells you more about how to be a bridge. You can look at that yourself. You can go into those steps. And I started that about 3 weeks ago, and I now get podcasts from Be the Bridge people. So if you continue to do that, if you want to continue to do that, that's something we could entertain to talk about as we go forward. But let's look at our questions on page 188 to 189. The first question is restorative reconciliation, particularly in the context of racial reconciliation, is primarily about repairing relationships between the parties, just like you said, Susan. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? Does anybody disagree with that statement? Okay, let's move on, because I think we've talked about that. Who should take the first step? Isn't that exactly what McConaughey and Acho talked about?
Mhm.
The offending party or the wounded party? Who should take the first step?
In the Jesus stories that she referenced, it was the offended party, because Jesus
Right.
had been offended by the betrayal of these disciples, and they were the ones that had a guilty conscience that he wanted to relieve them of.
Sue?
But also he was the power person. So it's kind of, it could go both ways for us.
Sue?
This.
I feel like that we're the ones who are becoming more aware, and we need to take that step, because the person that you may take that step with won't know that you want to reach out. They are going, because they're the ones who've been offended and also may be fearful of what could happen. They probably aren't going to initiate it.
I agree. In the Gospel of John, we see Jesus restoring both Peter and Thomas, both of whom had denied him in some way. What observations can you make? Well, Mary Ellen just mentioned it. In the way Jesus acted to restore the relationship with both. He made both of them not feel guilty. He didn't hold it against them.
He was not condemning. Yeah.
Yeah, he never accused them of doing anything wrong. He just showed forgiveness without discussing the offense, which seems to me to be very positive. But
Yes, yes. And you're right, Carmen. He didn't condemn anybody.
And he had the power to restore the relationships.
He
I mean,
did.
you know, he was the one that had that power. And of course, that's the story of the gospel. And
Right.
all of us who believe it have that power through
Yes. Yes.
Jesus. So
Yes.
it's very
What
hopeful.
Well, what obstacles do you see to restorative reconciliation in our country, our state, our church, our community? And I think we've talked about this before. It's the fear that the other people have. That's what we talked about earlier. Are there other obstacles?
I mean, I think there's a lot of people who aren't just afraid, they really don't see it.
No, they really don't
It's-
see it.
It's not I mean, like my mom has had this understanding come to her during the pandemic, after George Floyd, and she read the book that I've talked to you guys a lot about, the We Are Not Yet Equal. And it was like a huge thing she had never realized was real. And she wasn't afraid of it being real. She just didn't know. She really thought all the things that she had always been told were true. And reading that book and finding out that her timeline of events and her kind of remembering of what the world, what Reagan was like and what the laws were like and all of that stuff just wasn't true. And so I think part of it is approaching people with some facts that are solely facts. They're not something that's real, that you tangible, not things as, because it's hard to see a lot of the stuff without, but I think approaching it not as emotionally, but as look at these things that have happened.
Right, right.
Will help the people who are not trying to avoid it, but who just really don't know.
If any of you, Carmen.
I was going to say too, I think like for me, just understanding the terminology and for us to both be on the same ground of understanding and relating in the same way is what's going to help conversation. I can't even speak to it because I'm getting all my words mixed up because this is also, I'm ashamed to say, new to me. So I'm learning, I'm listening to all of you all, and I'm thinking, oh man, will I ever get to where I'm as well read, where I can speak to this comfortably? And so don't let me quit.
You will. We appreciate you being with us. I found something.
Excuse me, Nancy.
Go
I just
ahead.
want to, if any of you like podcasts, Judy and I have been listening to one called Learning How to See. And it's by Bruce McLaren and Richard Rohr and Jackie Lewis. But it talks about this. It talks about implicit bias and community bias that are so programmed into our reptile brains that they kick in before we've even started to consciously think. And it's fascinating. And one of the things that took me by surprise was that studies have shown that people prefer a simple lie to a complex truth. That's how
Yes.
our brains are programmed.
Yes.
And we reject anything that's not familiar to us before we've even thought about it. But anyway, if you like podcasts, it's fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
It's
Sue.
called Learning How to See.
Someone explained to me how to access podcasts.
You go to wherever you get if you go to I don't have an iPhone, so I go to Google Play Store where you get other games, and then you just type in the search bar the title, the podcast, and then the title, and it pulls it right up, Sue.
Okay.
So you would just type in Learning How to See.
Yeah, podcast Learning How to See.
There's a website for it too.
Is there?
Yeah, and
For
it has like links to click
Oh,
to play it directly from like Safari or whatever web page that you use.
yeah.
Windows.
I can send
Safari.
you the link real quick.
What are positive signs we've seen besides you guys?
I've seen in our family, our grandchildren
Absolutely.
intermingling more and sharing friendships across the board, not just limiting to white friends. And I think that's encouraging.
I think so. I think
My
so.
grandson goes to a magnet school, and it's in a less prosperous part of town than his house. And he wanted to be on a swim team last year. So his mother let him walk after school to the YMCA that was in that neighborhood. And the kid who was walking that way from his class was a Black kid. So they got to be after school buddies. And the beauty of that is that the community had established this magnet school where it is likely that those children are going to have something in common because they're both bright and school achieving kids. So they've got some stuff in common anyway. And then that after school walk kind of cemented it. I don't know what's happened now in the pandemic because nobody's been to school in so long, but it's a good start. That's a real healthy start. I think better, my children went to magnet schools. But even after elementary school, it seemed to me that being embedded, having this smaller group embedded in an all minority school made some of those stereotypes stronger.
Mhm.
So we got some fixing to do.
We do. We've got a lot of work to do. But how can this process get hijacked? As question 6 asked, how do you think this whole process might get hijacked?
I think by being angry
Anger?
and frustrated with people who aren't seeing it, and having that lead our conversations.
Or who won't see it?
Yes,
Who
or
won't take who won't take that first step to learn?
Yeah.
I did an article for the Windmill on our class, and I had a comment from somebody who said, how long do you intend to harp on this topic?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I said, until I draw my dying breath.
Good for
And
you.
nothing else was said. But
There's,
that's sad.
there's
It
a
is, but that's a
video.
way, of ducking, is to
Yes.
say that this is too much. We've done this
Yeah.
already. This is enough.
Sue,
There is a video of toddlers running toward each other, black and white, and embracing, and they're so excited to see each other, and then they continue to run and play. Someone took that and edited it so that it looked like the black child was chasing the white child, and they used it in a very negative sense.
I saw that.
So that's one of the ways that
It can get hijacked.
it can get.
I think we have to face the fact that it'll take a little courage to call out that
Yes.
stuff. When you
Yes.
see it on Facebook, when you see
Yep.
it even posted by people you like,
Yeah.
you say, oh,
Yeah.
wait, this is not what
No.
you want to support.
Jen, did you have comment?
Yes, Sue, I posted the link to the podcast in the chat.
Thank you. I saw it. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to say in the previous
Okay.
question, the youth I see, the teenagers are really inspiring, and I like, as far as like hope and what's coming, they're so much more aware of everything about these subjects than I ever was as a teenager, and are proactive and want to learn more and want to make the world like a real better place, like a truly better place, not just in a, I don't know.
Right.
Just
Right.
They really want to make real change in the world and aren't afraid to have conversation and aren't afraid to post it and they're just, I'm sure it's not all the teenagers, but the ones that I am seeing are just, they really give me a lot of hope.
It's fun to have that hope. And those kids at that age, whether they're your grandchildren or kids from church, give you that hope of tomorrow, because they seem to have all of their ducks in a row as far as these things the white allergies don't pass through them. They don't even see them.
No,
And
none of it does.
no. So I think our
feel
youth have given
impressed.
us a big pat on keep going. Anybody have anything else they want to discuss on any of this?
I think I've talked too much, but I'm dying to say this one last thing.
We'll say it.
It came from a friend of mine who had read a book that put out the idea that time is on our side, that the demographics of this nation are going to change, the demographics of this state are going to change. And as they change, equality is the only option. We can't, there won't be enough white people to enforce white supremacy. It's going to be gone.
It's going to be gone.
So in a way, our choice is whether to embrace that change and make it a graceful transition, or to dig in our heels and make sure it's a miserable transition. And I think that just encourages me a lot.
Just get in touch with
reality. When it gets in their face, they get it. I mean, look at the people in North Dakota. They finally get it that they have to wear masks. Once it gets in your face, you get it.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully Kerrville gets it soon.
Soon,
Yes.
soon, before we turn into North Dakota.
Yes, yes. I lived in North Dakota. We don't
I'm
want to
from
turn
Iowa.
into North
They're
Dakota.
good people. They're just,
Yes, they
they're
are.
just hard
They're
to
hardy
persuade.
people. They're hardy people. They have to be to live up there in the winters. Let's turn over to the prayers of restoration and reconciliation. Would someone like to read the one by Whitney Tuckton?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Volunteer. Jesus, we ask that you would use the awareness and acknowledgement of our brokenness and our disobedience and loving our neighbor the way you would to restore our relationship with humanity. We pray that you would raise up a multitude of repentant and bold leaders to humbly and profoundly guide your church to be the world changers you designed us to be. Jesus, give us open eyes, ears, hearts, minds, and spirits to recognize injustice and lead us to be restorers of dignity, worth, and justice. We recognize that as we are reconciled and restored to our God through you, we also should be reconciled and restored to one another. Jesus, may we be found faithful in the restoration of the Imago Dei in all humanity in all corners of creation.
Amen.
Mhm.
Okay. We're those bold leaders that they're talking about. We've got the information. We have to make the first move. And we'll have more Emmanuel Acho as we go on during the time. But if you have opportunities of free time this week and you want to just do something fun, go to YouTube and listen to Emmanuel. He does a good job with that. And he is the one who started this on his own. So everybody have a good week. Next week's our last week. Please read chapter number 10. And when I say last week, I mean it's the last week that we meet as we take a break for Advent and Christmas. And then as we go into Epiphany, we will start in January again, and we'll have about 6 or 7 weeks. So it's not long enough to do a book, but it certainly is long enough to talk about. So we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye, Tracy.
Oh, bye, Nancy. I'm so busy trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do next.
I'm going to go look at her link.
Oh,